Good afternoon and welcome to ITC webinar on a session where we will be discussing the impact of COVID-19 on smallholder farmers in India. I would request Ghosh sir, Dr. Ghosh, to start the event.
Hello everyone, Professor Anjani Kumar, Mr. Sarvana Kumar, Professor Meenakshi, and Professor Mahendra Dev. I am only making a formal to one because most of the important thing will be done by the moderator, Professor Anjani Kumar. But before that, let me tell you that especially in the context of Bihar, we have been very concerned about this topic. Those of you who had some chance to visit the markets, the vegetable markets or any other agricultural market, I did that in Patna. You could see the devastating changes that have been seen in those places, both in terms of supply chain as well as price, not formations, plus price deformations, you can call it, that used to happen. So I am looking for your presentations, and I request Anjani to moderate. Roughly speaking, we have about 1 hour for 3 speakers, so about 15 minutes each we can give, and then Anjani will take the rest of the time to discuss about. Over to Anjani.
Thank you very much, sir. First of all, I would like to express my sincere thanks for giving me this opportunity. And I joined Dr. Ghosh to welcome all the eminent speakers as well as the distinguished participants to this very important topic. As mentioned by Bijeta, the topic is impact of COVID-19 on a smallholder farmers in India and the way forward. When we talk of agriculture in South Asia and particularly in India, basically it is a smallholder dominated because 90% of their, close to 90% of the farmers are a smallholder. So, and marginal elder smallholders, they are more vulnerable, their challenges are more complex. So necessarily we have to understand the implications of this lockdown or the COVID-induced lockdown on their well-being. So in this, we know Dr. Ghosh was mentioning, you visit any place, you see devastating changes occurring everywhere. So this impact of this unprecedented pandemic has been huge and huge to all sectors. It has implications, physical implications, mental implications, social and cultural implications. And right now we have reached 25 million cases in the world, and India is close to 3.4 million cases, though we have taken a kind of early measures of one of the most severe lockdown in the world. We have taken, India's lockdown was one of the severest in the world, but in spite of that, numbers are growing, and I think it will grow further for some time till we get the kind of remedial vaccines or some sort of cure. We have to live with this, and it has impacted, as I mentioned, and there are several issues. But in this webinar, we will focus more on the agriculture, and that too, because of paucity of time, we will focus a few focused themes. Most of the sectors have been affected, and agriculture relatively at macro level have been affected less than the other sectors, manufacturing and services sector. But within agriculture, there are again, suppose milk products and dairy farming, poultry farming, other kind of things. Those perishables, they have burnt the more, they have incurred severe losses as compared to the non-perishable cereals and pulses. So in this seminar, we will look for some of the answers, some of the deliberation, how this COVID-19 induced lockdown affected the agriculture sector in terms of production, in terms of processing, in terms of marketing, in terms of food supply chain management, and overall livelihoods, employment in the agriculture sector, and also how the government initiatives. You all know that there are 3 ordinances which have been, many people are saying that overdue, were enacted. How these, particularly deregulation of essential commodities, contract farming act, reforms in APMC Act, how they are going to change the lives of farmers, lives of small and marginal farmers, whether they will be left out of these reforms, or these reforms will bring more inclusivity in the deliberations, and also how infrastructure, how credit market will function. And this pandemic, though thrown a lot of challenges, but several things are emerging also. Many things are now unfolding, many new normal kind of things are emerging. So what is going to be the new normal in land markets, in labor markets, in credit markets, or overall the situation? What are the opportunities for agricultural mechanization and digitization of agriculture? Was a lot of emphasis on digital technology, whether it will facilitate procurement, procurement of inputs, procurement of outputs, and also several lessons we can draw from managing this kind of very exogenous, very hard exogenous shocks. What lessons we can learn so that in the future we can mitigate the adverse impact of such a pandemic. And so these are few questions, and I have the pleasure to introduce 3 very eminent speakers of this afternoon. I will start with Professor J.B. Meenakshi, an internationally renowned economist. She is a professor of economics at the Delhi School of Economics, and before that she also worked in International Food Policy Research Institute, where now I am working, and where she headed the impact and policy research on biofortification. And she has been working a lot on food security, lot of nutrition security, and also interface between agriculture and nutrition, and lot of work. In fact, very well-known economist. I think every student of economics knows her. So I welcome you, Professor Meenakshi, and it's our pleasure to have you. Then we will have S. Sarvana Kumar, who is the Secretary, Department of Agriculture, Government of Bihar. He is a very senior civil servant belonging to the Bihar IS cadre, and before this position, he was also Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Human Resource Development, and also served as Private Secretary to the Minister of Communications and IT. And he has been, I think, he might have businessed many things. He might have managed or directed management of several disruptions in the agriculture sector, because when lockdown was announced, it was an harvesting season, and that still lockdown is going on. And then we have embarked on the sowing and transplanting season, which is particularly in Eastern India as a major crop, paddy. So he might have seen many things, and we will look forward from him the first-hand experience. Then we have Professor S. Mahendra Dev. Again, we all know him. He's an internationally renowned economist, and currently he is the Director and Vice Chancellor of Indira Gandhi Institute of Development Research. He has also served as the Chairman, equivalent to the Secretary to the Government of India, Agricultural Cost and Prices, Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices. And before that, he was Director, CES, Hyderabad Center for Economic Industry. And he has number of publications, number of reports. And he has been serving to several committees to the Government of India, including the Prime Minister's Task Force on Employment, and also Rangarajan Commission on Financial Inclusion. And he has been a very active member of the 9th, 10th and 11th 5-year plans. And he is a well-known. And also he was, till recently, he was in our board, IFFRI Board of Governors. So I welcome you, sir, and I welcome all 3 of you. And as suggested by Dr. Ghosh, I will request you to adhere to the time, so that we can have some question answer, and people who are participating, they can throw some questions and some open discussion. So as I was indicated that Professor Meenakshi will have PowerPoint presentation. So, Madam, I welcome you. Now the floor is yours and time is 15 minutes. And I will look forward for some of your deliberations that what could be the sustainable ways or measures to ensure the challenges of undernutrition and malnutrition even among the farming households, and among farming household, marginal and smallholders are more vulnerable. Looking at your expertise and all, apart from the general agricultural scenario. Thank you very much. I invite Professor Meenakshi for her presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anthony Kumar, for that introduction, and to the IGC for this invitation. I think it's a most timely webinar. I want to thank Dr. Anthony Kumar because he sent some really excellent talking points. I will not be able to do justice to all of them, but as it turns out, I do have some recent work on the impact that the COVID-19 has had on specific things such as prices and quantities in a few crops, and how that impact has been mitigated by whether or not a particular state had undergone some market reforms. And that's what I'd like to confine the first 10 to 15 minutes. And I'll also have something to say about nutrition, but maybe I will keep that towards the end after the other speakers have had a chance to make their presentation. So let me begin with the topic at hand, which is to look at agricultural markets. This is joint work with Deepak Vashne, who's a former PhD student, Devesh Roy, and myself. And just to put in a plug that this is literally a week old paper that is out in the Indian Economic Review, and this is really downloadable for anybody who wishes to review this. So I need to restate the context which Dr. Anjali Kumar has set up so well, except to say that the agricultural sector, to reiterate that the agricultural sector is both a source of resilience as well as in some ways more vulnerable. The income or demand compression that came from an income shock, I think, is probably valid for all sectors of the economy, but the agility with which the agricultural sector and the value chain, the food value chain in particular, have to adjust to a move to online transactions, to a move away from delivering to restaurants, to delivering to home delivery, to adjust to supply chain management issues, inventory management issues, at a time when we know that the agricultural sector, more than other sectors of the economy, are dependent on cash. And that was certainly in short supply, perhaps a greater shock than even, I would venture to say, even the demonetization episode. And of particular concern was the fact that in February, we had the advance estimates of wheat production, and those had predicted a record harvest of wheat. And there were concerns about, even though in principle, the essential commodities were exempt from restrictions, about whether in fact we would have a problem with wheat markets. For instance, there was concern that there may be shortage of labor, but on the other hand, we also saw a great deal of reverse migration, what was termed reverse migration from urban to rural areas, and we simply don't know how that would have panned out. So this was the main reason why we decided to go down this route. And what we do in this paper is to focus on the primary commodity end of the value chain. In other words, we're looking at wholesale markets, we are not considering what happens further up the value chain. There's other work indeed from Kanika Mahajan and her co-author at Ashoka University, and also by Sudha Nair and IGIDR and her co-author on other parts of the retail chain. Our focus here is simply on primary commodities, and we use wholesale market prices. So we decided to focus on wheat as a staple crop, and to also look at tomatoes and onions. We didn't do potatoes. So these are potato, onion, and tomato are the sort of three major vegetable crops in the country. And we decided not to focus on potato because we felt that the market arrivals were already thinning by the time that April came around. So we looked at crops where we thought the markets were still relatively thick. So we try and see whether impacts are differentiated depending on whether you're looking at a staple food crop or a perishable commodity. We also try and disentangle to the extent that we can whether these effects were more pronounced, let's say, in April, or whether these sort of persisted through the entire 3-month period that we consider this paper, which is April through the end of June. And then, as I mentioned before, to what extent states that had adopted various provisions of the APMLA were able to better serve the interests of farmers. So, and again, by the way, if you have questions or clarification, please feel free to interrupt. We focus on 5 states, namely Haryana, Madhya Pradesh, Punjab, Rajasthan, and UP. In large part, this is derived from the fact that we wanted to look at wheat. But we have actually scraped together a fairly nice data set from the ag market data source, which many of you are familiar with. So we have 91 days data for daily price data for 91 days for 2 years, 2019 and 20, so that we have a comparison, day-on-day comparison can be made from almost 1,000 mandis in these 5 states. And then we also did 2018 data to see if we could credibly attribute causal impacts to the 2019-20 comparison. So we looked at the APMLA provisions from the NITI Aayog. Professor Ramesh Chand was very kind to help us with generating this variable, and we have a slightly differentiated variable on this, which is, it's a dummy variable which takes value 1 if of these 5 states, the states that undertook more of the provisions of the APMLA reforms versus tomato and onion, where we only look at whether states actually delisted the sale of fruits and vegetables from the APMC Act that used to be prevalent in earlier years. And finally, of course, since the focus is on COVID, we look at the COVID caseload data by district and categorize districts by incidence, and this data was sourced from the covidindia.org website. Our empirical strategy, as I mentioned, was to try and take advantage of the fact that this is, as Dr. Kumar mentioned, an exogenous shock. So we try and look at day-on-day comparisons between 2020 and 2019 in market arrivals and prices. And then we use the COVID caseload data to categorize districts as high and low COVID and see how effects are differentiated in districts with high caseloads. The expectation being that irrespective of whether the lockdown was eased or not, if you have public information to the fact that caseloads are high, then there may be voluntarily situations where people would withdraw and perhaps have not be out on the streets or not undertaking economic transactions relative to districts where this pandemic had perhaps not shown itself in as rampant a form. So we only interpret coefficients that are robust to parallel trends. In other words, that we are able to say that yes, we have accounted for the fact that in 2018 and 2019 these mandis behave the same way in terms of prices and market arrivals. And then to look at whether the adoption of market reforms had any impact on mitigating, mitigating the price difference, we look at a triple difference approach, so that we take the double difference and then we examine whether states that had adopted a larger number of provisions, market reforms, were able to mitigate any adverse outcomes relative to those states which had not done so. So, because I know I'm going to run out of time, I thought let me just provide a preview of the results right up front. The results show that for staple food crops such as wheat, with only one staple food crop that we look at, the prices were by and large anchored at the MSP, irrespective of which period you look at. They fell after the withdrawal of support operations in June. However, 2 state governments, UP and Haryana, had announced that they would continue to provide support operations through the end of June and indeed even offer bonuses for later arrivals. We find that actually these 2 states were able to address a further decline in prices in a way that the other 3 states could not. We find that high COVID incidences had much higher market arrivals, especially for the perishables. We don't see that so much for wheat. And this is consistent with distress sales and easing of lockdown measures, which enables easier transportation. And we did see that increased market arrivals were associated with depression in prices, but we see this really in the case of tomato, not so much for onion, because the onion results are not very robust. And finally, we find that adoption of market reforms, perhaps not surprisingly, matters much more for the perishables than for staples, because for wheat, basically, the MSP acts as a price anchor. I'm not saying that the MSP held, but nonetheless, it provided an anchor so that it prevented prices from falling more than they perhaps would have. So that's where we end up as far as the results of our paper is concerned. I'll perhaps present some summary statistics to show you what happens. So these are not distinguished by high and low case load districts. These are simply daily price data on wheat arrivals and wheat prices, where the dark line, continuous line, is 2019 and the dotted line is 2020. And you do find a considerable suppression of market arrivals up through May, because you'll see that there would have been in 2019 a fairly large spike towards the end of April, which you didn't see because this was the time of the first and second phases of the lockdown. But then as the lockdown starts to ease, you see that there is some recovery in wheat arrivals. And as far as prices are concerned, you'll see that there was indeed a spike very early on, but then later on you see a flattening and then perhaps even a declining trend. And this is at a time when most states' procurement operations would have ceased. So as I had mentioned earlier, we also looked at, again, these are just summary statistics, what happened to wheat prices in Uttar Pradesh and in Haryana. And if you look at 2019, then right at the 30th, around the 1st of June, when the government basically pulls out of markets, you do see a sharp decrease in prices in 2019. But when you look at 2020, in these two states, which committed to extending procurement operations, this kind of a dip right around the 1st of June is not visible, and indeed prices remain steady through the month of June. If you look at tomatoes, again, you will find that there was indeed a spike in prices. We are unable to figure out what these peaks for 2019 consist of. We have double-checked data entry errors and so on and so forth, so I don't have an explanation for that. But at least as far as prices are concerned, there is indeed a sharp increase, but then they taper off before going up again by the end of June. And finally, for onions, again, you see that there is a price spike that happens very early on in the phase 1 of the lockdown, but as supply constraints ease, you'll see this flattening out, and this difference is not statistically significant. As I said, these graphs do not show what happened to low versus high caseload, differential impact of low versus high caseload districts. I know that I've run out of time, so let me just come directly to my conclusions, and I'm happy to discuss the results on the double difference and triple difference if people are interested. I want to first say caveat emptor that the pandemic is still evolving, and our data only go up to the 30th of June. And there are long-term effects and short-term effects that are still to work themselves out. We haven't done an impulse response kind of an analysis, but having put that caveat on the table, until the end of June, we don't see that much of an impact of COVID on prices, but we do see a fair impact of COVID on market arrivals, and that impact is consistent with the easing of lockdowns and the need to generate cash, so people are coming to the market to sell. And indeed, the magnitudes are far higher. The magnitude of positive impact on market arrivals are far higher, 11 to 15%, sometimes 20 to 30% higher than you see the impact on prices. But all of this is pretty much coming from the perishables, and in particular from tomato. So agricultural market reforms matter much more for perishables than for staples. And the basic reason is that when you have the government being a very large player in the market with reasonably deep pockets, it serves to anchor at least prices. So that in fact, market arrivals over the period April to June are 11% higher for wheat compared to low COVID instance districts. For tomato and onion, any price decreases due to high COVID were mitigated to the extent of 11% for tomato and onion, and only 1% for wheat, which is hardly a large magnitude, which underscores the government's role both in being the single largest player in the market as far as wheat is concerned, but also perhaps not as well recognized in providing an enabling environment in states that adopted market reforms to ensure that farmers get higher prices. So I'll stop there and only put a plug in for the fact that the special issue of the Indian Economic Review contains other papers, not necessarily on the agricultural sector. I think you'll find the paper by Sumit Guha, who talks about pandemics in India and the information economy that is associated with it, are the effects because of the disease or because of the economic restrictions associated with the disease and so on. I've run out of time, so I'll stop. But just to say that these are all freely downloadable.
Thank you very much, Professor Meenakshi, for excellent presentation. Now I would like to invite N. Sarvana Kumar, who is Secretary to the Government of Bihar. Sir, particularly since you have first-hand experience in managing many affairs during this pandemic, I would like if you can reflect upon what lessons we can learn from disruption and subsequent management of the both input and output supply chain, so that in future we may be well prepared for meeting this kind of contingencies. And also, in your opinion, what would be the way forward for the new normal for agricultural extension system? Well, a lot of things are happening. So with this, the floor is yours, and you can take 15 minutes or less. That will be fine.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Anjani, and it was nice to hear Professor Meenakshi. I'm glad extremely that I could join actually. It's absolutely a relevant topic based on my experience, basically here dealing with two departments which deals with farmers, the farm sector, agriculture and also the animal and fisheries resources. But I'm not a academician, okay, so I'm just a practitioner, okay. So let me just share my experience, okay. So I have just basically four things to say, but before that, let me just tell the conclusion that, this lockdown, COVID-19 lockdown also has again proved beyond doubt that the small and marginal farmers are already vulnerable and they become more vulnerable in such crises. So that has been proved beyond doubt again and again, okay. So now let me tell you, the first point is the immediate impact, the immediate impact what we have seen in the sense when the lockdown was announced. So naturally the input linkage was the most affected, but also the output side was also affected. But the main thing is, in case of agriculture, the agriculture input shops, they were all shut down initially. Initially nobody could really understand. We really went for such a harsh lockdown. The clarity was not there. I mean, no one really thought like agricultural inputs shop as one of the essential items which are really required. So, and also there was a big confusion about the animal product sale also, because unfortunately there was a linkage of animal products and the coronavirus. When you eat non-vegetarian foods, you will get corona that kind of thing. So that confusion was happening. So primarily because of this, it was an immediate shock effect on the farmers, especially the smaller farmers. And the harvesting, I think you were mentioning about the harvesting also. It was exactly the harvesting season, okay, the Rabi harvesting season. There are two things which I would like to say. One is in some districts, at least in two districts, unfortunately, the harvesting was still pending, and that area was announced as the containment zone. See, the Government of India's regulation at that time was like, in containment zone, no movement of anything is allowed actually, okay. So then we had to, convince the government, and we had to take permission from Government of India like why it is important, So fortunately, they allowed with the condition that, we had to bring farmers from outside, some laborers from outside and machinery, and we got it done, okay, with following some precautions and all. And the second one was the combined harvesters are used in a big, numbers, basically for the harvesting purpose. But, unlike Punjab, Haryana and all, it's a recent phenomenon since last many years. But the drivers of combined harvesters, they used to come from Punjab. So now because of this lockdown, the drivers could not come. So the big farmers, they were in a really a big problem. Without that, they can't go for combined harvesters. Engaging the farm laborers, engaging the laborers will take more time. That's their claim. But then we also thought like it is an opportunity that more agricultural laborers who have come as a reverse migration from big cities like Bangalore, Chennai, Delhi and all. So they are already available in the villages at that point of time. So they are already there, they can go for it. But then we heeded to the request of the big farmers also. So we had to mobilize almost 650 the drivers from Punjab, Haryana and some parts of Western UP. So they all came all the way. But then the government's decision was at that time, because they are coming from outside, so they had to put in quarantine. So they were put in quarantine for 14 days and then they were put in use. But by that time, I think fortunately the reverse migration, the laborers who were readily available in the village. So the most farmers, they took the help of the, the laborers and did the harvesting. So this is also one of the interesting and very sensitive thing we did observe. Over I think few weeks, we could really streamline both the input and also the confusion over the link of animal products and the corona also could be more or less addressed. And the second point I wanted to say is about the demand compression. It's because of the lockdown, people were not going out. Okay, so people were not eating outside, in the sense the restaurants, everything was closed. So naturally, the demand for farm produce and animal produce, so it has really come down. In fact, very heavily, in my opinion. Okay. So the many perishable products, like, non-perishable products can be stored, but the perishable products like tomato and the other vegetables and fruits, they were available so cheap, right? They were available so cheap. So that really was harming the smaller farmers in a very significant way. I don't have the data and all because I have not studied in a theoretical manner, but, that was something we could not really help them immediately. One reason was like, unlike some developed states like Tamil Nadu and all, they could really, act as a buffer, in the sense they were having a marketing wing and they could really collect it from the smaller farmers, ensure the basic price, and then they were selling it. So unfortunately, in a state like Bihar, we could not do that, but we have already decided that was one of the learning. I would put it as a new normal thing, like we should have a proper marketing mechanism, at least for helping the small and marginal farmers in such crisis. Okay, so that is one learning for us. And in the demand compression, another one is the flowers, especially the marigold, genda. Very poor farmers, they were cultivating genda, and also other, like even big farmers, they were doing it in poly houses and all. But because of the lockdown, there were no functions, no programs. So the demand for flowers has come down from 100% to 0%. Okay, so the temples were closed, so there is no need for marigold at all. There was no use of it. So especially the small and marginal farmers involved in this kind of cultivation, they got affected very hugely. To support them, this year when we came up with the scheme, so we have increased the subsidy which we are giving from 50% to 70% this time. Okay, so that to compensate for the loss they incurred. And the second thing is about the maize, which is which is also a learning for us. The maize cultivation, the productivity of maize in the whole country is the highest in Bihar. Okay, but this time also the production was good in spite of some incidents of fall armyworm and all. The production was really very good. But then the rates have come down from the normal 2,000 plus per quintal. This has come down to less than 1,000 rupees. The reason is because there was no demand for maize. There are two reasons. Number one is the mother units. Mother unit has been the starch, based units. starch-based units are primarily like textile and the paper industry. Because of the lockdown, that got affected severely. So naturally, the mother units are closed, so the starch unit getting not running properly. So naturally, there was no demand for maize. And the second one is the animal feed also. Because the consumption of non-vegetarian foods has come down. So naturally, the animal feed units also got affected. Actually, their operations got affected. Because of that, the maize, the rates have come down more than 50%. So it's a huge loss to the farmers. And the third one, I think I'm running short of time. The third one is the government efforts. I just want to mention a few things. One is from the government of India's side. The PM Kishan scheme is there. I'm sure many of you will be aware of Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi Yojana. So in that, actually, for improving the farmers' income on a DBT mode, every year 6,000 rupees is directly sent to the farmer's account in 3 installments. So when this lockdown happened, the government of India took an initiative of sending these installments well in advance to the farmer's account. So that is definitely of some help. And the second one is in Bihar specifically. Exactly during this lockdown period, starting from February, it's February, March, April, because of it's a climate change impact, unseasonal rainfall, hailstorm created a major problem in causing crop damage. So, but the government could really do a lot of work in this front, and we ensured all the crop damages have been compensated. More than 650 crores have been distributed within 1.5 months of the occurrence. And the third one is the awareness creation we did in a big way. What exactly, maintaining the social distancing, they can do harvesting, the shops should be open, there is no ban on it. So this kind of awareness creation we did in a big way. And the fourth one among the government efforts is the coordinating the entire supply chain. Like for example, the milk processing units, okay, the cooperative milk processing units, they also were facing problem in the sense like in getting some of the packaging materials, all those things. So a lot of efforts we need to, put in to ensure that proper supply. Otherwise, if we can't pack, then we can't procure the milk. That will be directly affecting the farmers, the poor farmers. Fish seed, for example, the Pangasius variety, the seeds are not, available here. The fingerlings have to come from West Bengal. It actually comes from Bangladesh, So that transportation was severely affected, and that was the season where we need to get. So a lot of efforts we need to put in. Even the roadside dabas were closed. So when we were bringing the Pangasius seedlings, so in between they want to refill the water and all. So that was also a challenge. We had to involve the district administration to do that. Similarly, the layer industry, the layer bird, the egg laying, the poultry industry got very severely affected. Because people have stopped eating eggs. Okay, so that awareness creation also we did. The last point, because I was specifically asked by you about the, by Anjani about new normal thing. So in my opinion, I think there are 3 things which are going to be the new normal. Number one is, I think the small and marginal farmers are the most vulnerable. So now this kind of crisis, I don't know. I'm not saying like Corona is going to be, it's not going to be extinct. Okay, I wish really it gets extinct. But through the, let us get a vaccine quickly and all, but then you never know, because I somehow feel like it's all because of the climate change impact. So the climate change is creating terrible problems. I think it is mainly because of that. We got locust attack in Bihar also. This is unthinkable. It happened, I think, 30 years before. After that, it has never happened. But, locust attack also happened. So this similarly coronavirus. So this kind of crisis, I think, because we have taken the nature for granted, so these kind of repercussions are going to happen. So we need to really prepare the farmers to tackle the climate change impacts. Okay, that is, I think, one important thing we are planning to do. And fortunately, we just started in last year. There is a program called Climate Resilient Agriculture Program. It was started in 8 districts. The results have been so good. We have, just last week only the government, in the cabinet, we have decided to extend it to all the 38 districts. Okay. So in that, actually, how we can really help the small farmers in tackling this kind of climate change impacts, including this kind of lockdown. So that is one thing. And for that, the second thing is we want to really promote the farmer producer organizations in a big way, because that will automatically ensure the backward and forward linkage. So fortunately, the Government of India also has come up with the scheme called, the FPO formation scheme. And in our state also, we are taking this FPO formation in a big way, because we do feel like that will really, help the farmers to really, gather together and tackle these kind of challenges in a better way. Because we saw this time, we have started some FPOs in the last few years. 2 FPOs I would like to mention, because, in Bihar, it was the season for mangoes and lychee, Shahi lychee, which is more than 85% production happens in Bihar only. So unfortunately, that was during the lockdown period. So that mobility was also getting affected. But some of the farmer producer companies, one in Bhagalpur district on Jardalu mango, the other one is in Muzaffarpur on Shahi lychee, because they have already come together as a FPC. They could really do this backward forward linkage very well, and they could really manage to market their produce in a much better manner. So this is also a learning lesson for us, and this is going to be the new normal, in the sense we are going to promote more FPOs. And the third is the technology. I said when the crop damage happened, it's because we could have an online platform for receiving applications and disposal of applications, and also transfer of funds through DBT mode, through using technology. It's primarily because of that reason we could, really help the farmers to compensate for their damage. So that's also like one thing, like technology, use of more technology is going to be the new normal, in my opinion. So that's all from my side. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. In fact, we got a lot of insights from the grassroots, and also what could be the possible pathways for future. And you are right, and we all feel that it's not only one pandemic. In future there may be many, extent may vary, but emergencies used to come, sometimes tsunami, sometimes localized, sometimes world scale. A scale may differ, but we have been facing a lot of problems, lot of climate change adverse impacts. So frequency is going to increase. I think there is almost consensus in academic also. So thank you very much, sir, for very good insights. And maybe in the later, after Professor Mahendra Dev's presentation, there may be some questions from the audience and others. So now I have the pleasure to invite Professor Mahendra Dev, sir. We would expect from you that at macro level, what has happened in terms of production, prices, and other kind of food supply chain, because a specific example regarding agricultural markets we got from Professor Meenakshi, and then what is happening in the operational sides, and in both input and output supply we got from Sarvan Kumarji, and then also from you that there is a trade-off, lot of now emphasis on direct benefit of transfer, whether it is PM Kisan or Prime Minister Garib Kisan Yojana. So how much you visualize that there will be trade-off between social safety nets kind of things and the real capital investment in agriculture? Because as a student of economics, we know that resources are finite, these are limited. So how best we can use, how best we can create a balance between these two kind of expenditure. And with this, the floor is yours, sir, and you have exactly 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. I thank IGC for inviting me. My fellow panelists, Dr. Meenakshi and Mr. Sarvan Kumar, have already given almost all the issues. Dr. Anjani Kumar actually summarized initially, and he gave some questions also. So maybe I'll stick to some of these questions. I can't answer all the questions, but I'll stick to that. Before that, at the outset, let me say small farmers are not homogeneous. I mean, the small farmers in irrigated is different from rain-fed, and similarly, some have succeeded in commercial farming, some have diversified to rural non-farm, some have subsistence-oriented farmers. So it's not a homogeneous kind of thing. But income of small farmers is very less compared to almost 1/10 of large farmers. And the risks, as Mr. Saravanan mentioned, that the risks and vulnerabilities are much higher for small and marginal farmers. So with that, I'll come to these questions, how the COVID-19 has impacted. The impact on rural areas is much lower than urban areas, we all know. There are also reports that rural economy is reviving. But the performance of agriculture is going to be much better than, of course, manufacturing and services. Agriculture, they're saying 2.5 to 3% growth this year compared to the contraction of non-farm 5 to 8%. And India is likely to have a bumper crop, both Kharif and Rabi. Of course, there are some floods now. But bumper crops can also lead to fall in farm prices. That the impact is much more on perishable crops than wheat and other crops. I mean, the COVID, we know, disrupted all the activities and supply chains. There are several surveys. In fact, Azim Premji University, they mentioned that, about 37% of the farmers unable to harvest, 37% harvest sold at reduced prices, and then also 77% consumed less food during this pandemic, but up to May, June. Even the rural unemployment is, CMI data, that time it says 22%. So it is not that only urban, rural also. But also, as mentioned, the demand compression, particularly for, perishables and the chicken. There was a rumor that if you eat chicken, will have corona. And milk also, because restaurants were closed, and so the demand also reduced. Also at macro level, if you see CPI, the consumer price index, and WPI, the wholesale price index, the wholesale price index has declined. That means farmers are not getting the prices, but CPI has increased more than 6%. So as a result, consumers are paying high prices. But as Dr. Ghosh mentioned, the markets, you can see the farmers are not getting high prices. So the impact is, of course, much more on perishables and allied activities. But coming to the reforms and also the government interventions, the reforms, agriculture reforms, Essential Commodities Act, the other two ordinances. I mean, we have been talking about this for the last 20 years or more, since the 2003 Model Act came. We have been looking forward it, but there are some problems, particularly whether they can involve the smallholders in these reforms. And also, EC Act, it's not very clear. Suppose if 100% increase in price, what will happen? For example, onion 15 rupees to 30 rupees it goes. EC Act will impose, they will have. So some of the things, and also center-state coordination is also important for these reforms. And on contract farming and the APMCs reforms, there are other non-APMC traded areas. Some things are not very clear. What are the taxes? They say there are no taxes. But if you go to outside state, what will happen? Mandi taxes in Punjab, what will happen? Written agreements in contract farming is not clear. So some of these things they have to iron out in order to have impact of these reforms. But I agree with these reforms are important, and it may have, particularly as Dr. Meenakshi mentioned, there's for perishables it matters much more than wheat, because MSP, although there are problems in MSP, I mean it's not reaching all the states. It's more few states and few crops MSP reaches. And on other things, the technology already mentioned that we need to have technology for small farmers. The IT technology, mobile phones, research and extension for them is much more important than large farmers. And on new normal, I agree with Saravanan. This, the climate change, other things are very important in future. But what lessons we can learn from disruption and subsequent thing is that we need to have, the investment in rural infrastructure and the storage, warehousing. Those things are much more important for the health infrastructure because if this kind of pandemic is needed, I mean rural areas much more. And also, as Dr. Anjani Kumar mentioned about the cash transfers. In fact, that social protection is equally important. The food transfers, cash transfers, ICDS, Anganwadis, and those things are equally important. In fact, recently, Dr. Rangaraj and myself, we suggested, the MG Narega and cash transfers, how it should be done. So there is no, trade-off between investment and all, because both are needed, but government has to prioritize which one is important or no. And similarly, agricultural exports, because the policy has not been consistent on agricultural exports, because Atmanirbhar doesn't mean that, you should increase your tariffs and all. We should be self-reliant much more than that. And on credit, Kumar has given one question. Credit is, the problem is during the pandemic also credit declined because microfinance institutions and also got affected. The banks got affected. And there are three problems in credit. One is not much improvement in the share of small and marginal farmers. Second is the share of indirect credit in total agriculture credit has increased, not direct credit to small and marginal farmers, and significant regional inequalities. I mean, for example, eastern sector get less agriculture credit compared to other areas. And indebtedness also, small and marginal farmers are high. And as mentioned in the questions, particularly eastern region, the dependence on money lenders is much higher. So even that in pandemic, they didn't get the credit. And on public investment, also eastern sector is much lower than other regions. So basically, we need to prepare for some of these things like, as mentioned, the climate change kind of risks coming for that. You need to have rural infrastructure, spend more on that. And because, rural wages are also important. In fact, before pandemic itself, rural wages have stagnant. And then what are these sustainable measures for nutrition? I'll spend 1 or 2 minutes and conclude. Undernutrition and malnutrition during this period, many surveys have shown that there is some increase because there is a less diversified diet because of the unemployment problems. They couldn't spend much on the micronutrients and pulses, those kind of things. So there is less diversified food. And also healthcare infrastructure, more concentrated on COVID. Here's not other problems are also there, other diseases and all, they're not taken into account. So I think this also we have to get prepared for that, next time something happens, that how to have the Anganwadis and ICDS and all, whether to give it at home happening, give it at rations at home, but still some preparation may be needed. Lastly, small farmers face a lot of challenges, access to inputs, marketing. They need a level playing field with the larger farmers and integration of value chains. And small farmers require special support, public goods and efficient links to input and output markets. But most important thing is this aggregation of their production output, because with millions of small farmers, they have only 2 bags or 3 bags of output, they won't get the right price. So there are so many institutional innovations are needed. We already have, the marketing innovations and FPOs, the farmer producer organizations, but the variations are more FPOs. Some are working well, some are not working well. So many of the small farmers cannot leave agriculture because the opportunities in non-farm sector are not very high now. But over time, of course, they have to shift to non-farm sector. So only option is to organize them into groups, for example, women self-help groups or FPOs. So in that way, they can get more input and output marketing thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for excellent points deliberated by you. In all the 3 presentations, there were few commonalities that all have agreed that there has been a compression or contraction of demand during the pandemic because of several reasons. Loss of jobs, inadequate connectivity, and sometimes halting of every kind of movement also. And also people are preparing for future, and lot of disruption in both input and output supply. And that takes me to the point that whether we can also have some deliberation on the decentralized food management, because we have seen in the grassroots or hinterlands, because when sudden lockdown was announced, as Mr. Sarvana Kumar was saying, that nobody was understanding what is allowed and what is not allowed. So a long time ago, Dr. Swaminathan used to advocate for community food banks kind of things. I think in these kind of pandemics, these issues are also important, so that at least in the vicinity you can take care of the more vulnerable sections. And there has been a lot of disruption in the nutrition programs like midday meal scheme or ICDS. Initially there was disruption. After deliberations, few governments started giving cash, few arranged for calling people in a school and then distributing, but there has been disruption. So yeah, we need more preparation for the tackling this kind of situation in future. And one thing emerged from all three, that collective action or aggregation, whether it is FPO or other kind of farmers, producers organizations or farmer organizations, but that is needed because most of our farmers are small and marginal. They don't have the scale at individual level. They face lot of constraints in input and output markets in terms of everything. So that message is clear, and I think we all have to promote whatever. And for that also, some of their studies on FPO, they are showing that when we give more focus from supply side, there is chances of shifting of government benefits. So how we create sensitization and awareness among the farmers so that we promote demand-led FPOs. Demand-led means demand should come from the farmers, and then government becomes the facilitator. Because we also conducted some of these surveys, and then I found that there are some problems in many parts of the country. So we have to be cautious also. It should not overdrive from the supply side. It should have demand pull also. Thank you very much. On behalf of the organizers and on my own personal behalf, I take this opportunity to thank all the three eminent speakers for their very insightful deliberations, and also the participants for very active participation and many incisive questions. And message is clear that there is a lot of challenge before us, I think, as a humanity whole, but there are opportunities, and we have to build on opportunities. We can use this crisis as an opportunity to bring more resilience in our economy, and agriculture could be one of the engines for bringing resilience to the economy as a whole. And I will just 2 points. One is commitment to investment. There is no escape route, and we have to facilitate private sector. And another is many of the problems of agriculture sector lie outside agriculture, like emphasis on rural non-farm sector. Yes, even the typical agricultural households, they are not deriving more than 40 or 45% of their household income from agriculture. So a smallholder agriculture can be very efficient, but it cannot be sufficient to maintain the household consumption, to maintain the education of their children. So there should be an integration of rural non-farm sector with the agriculture, and more focus on decentralized agro-industrialization, rural industrialization. Thanks again. It was a very good, insightful discussion. Thank you to you all, sir. Thank you.
I shall be very brief because we already have crossed a lot of times. It was indeed a learning experience from me to hear such an exhaustive discussion on agriculture in general and the problems of small and marginal farmers in particular. I'm extremely thankful to Professor Mangadev, who drew our attention to a number of the dimensions of the agriculture sector, which is normally left out in the discussion. Similar thanks to Professor Meenakshi, Kumar, and Anjani.